Hi, Melle. Thank you so much for joining me. I really am looking forward to having a conversation about how you've used Contribly so far and your experiences. Would you mind maybe starting off by telling me a bit about who you are and what you do and maybe a bit of your career so far?
Sure. I'm Melle Drenthe, which is impronounceable in English, so you don't have to try it. I've been working for newsroom teams, newsroom floors for about 30 years now. So I kind of started working for the Volkskrant, which is a big national newspaper, Dutch newspaper, when I was 18. My first job was calling foreign correspondents for the news floor, which was like in the era before email and mobile phones. And I kind of went on from there. I spent a lot of time working together with the previous editor-in-chief at the Volkskrant. And right now, since Corona, so that's 3 years ago, I moved with the old deputy editor-in-chief over to the regional newspapers for Mediahuis. She is the editor-in-chief right now. And I started there basically as an online journalist. But I started doing a lot of digital projects right next to it, like digital headline projects, all kind of stuff. And the last thing I did was introduce our new CMS, our new app, our new site. We built that together. I'm doing a lot of data analysis to see whether the content that we're producing is put away the right way. And I'm also doing a lot with AI right now. I'm part of the group that's in the forefront of actually implementing AI on the news floor instead of only talking about it. So that is kind of what I've been doing in the last 35 years.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Well, no, not
So
35.
much experience.
Yeah, I've basically been working on newsroom floors my entire life.
And now you're working with Mediahuis and you're working in one of the hyperlocal brands,
Yeah.
well, a group of them. Could you tell me a little bit more about the company that you're working for?
Yeah, right now I'm Mediahuis, like you said. So there's in the Netherlands, there's two big Belgian publishers. They're called DPG, which stands for the Pers Group, which translates to the press group, and Mediahuis, which translates to Mediahuis. And basically, they both kind of divided the entire Dutch newspaper market and also a lot of television stations, radio stations between each other. So much so, actually, that we call it Autoriteit Financial Markets, like the watchdog is actually looking into it and see if they haven't become too powerful. So, for example, DPG wants to buy a big news TV channel, RTL, and they're actually the watchdog is like, well, we're not sure if we're going to let that go through. So that's like exciting for them, I guess. Interesting times. And Mediahuis owns the Telegraaf, which is the largest Dutch national newspaper, and it owns a lot of regional newspapers in the Netherlands, for which I'm working. And it also owns a lot of Belgian newspapers, some Irish newspapers, one in Germany. So it's basically a big international newspaper concern. Is concern an English word, or is it only means that we call it concern? I don't know. Let's call it company. Concern is kind of kind of a weird word to use in English. So basically, and I've been working for the regional brands in the Netherlands, which is Noord-Hollands Dagblad, and for other titles. And we basically have one big newsroom floor and a lot of regional offices. So our print newspaper, the first part is the same, and then the region part is the second, and it's all different for every brand. So all the innovations that I do, and also like Contribly in this case, is automatically used for 5 brands. And that makes it easier for me because we have a very small one. The M uit de Courant is really, really small. Sometimes it only has a couple of hundred readers online. So I can test stuff out there in an actual production environment. And then when it works there or it doesn't kill the site or whatever, kill the app, then I can basically scale it up slowly. So then I can go to one of the other 3 brands, which are the Leids Dagblad, Gooi Eemlander, and Haarlems Dagblad. You don't have to pronounce that either. They're kind of the same size. They're kind of similarly sized. So I can use it there. We have a lot more readers there. And then if it all works, we can go to Noord-Hollands Dagblad, who has like more than 1 million page views sometimes these days, over 150, I think 130,000 subscribers. So that's pretty big. And if it works there, I have like a really, really good, collegial working team together with the Telegraaf, which is the biggest brand. And so then they can try it out as well, because then I can have it running on 5 titles. If you're interested, go ahead.
So you're a bit like you're running innovation from a small scale to a bigger scale and passing on
Yeah,
that
and
innovation.
I use the Telegraph to get stuff done because I can like convince the Telegraph that a plan that I have is a good one. Then it becomes a lot more easy for me because 70% of all the page views in Mediahuis is the Telegraph. So if they're like we're interested, then people start running harder, which makes sense. Obviously, if the New York Times wants something, it's probably easier to get it done than if the IJmuidenkrant wants something. So I kind of use it both ways. I use their leverage and traction to get stuff done, and they use me as some sort of laboratory to see whether it actually works. So we got headline summarizers done. We got something called news search done, where we actually uploaded the entire Telegraph archive, and journalists can ask questions to it in a chatbot. So you can ask how many times have we interviewed Francesca Dumas, and then they're like 0 times, and we're like, well, maybe that's something that we can do, or like 51 times, like, okay, let's not call Francesca anymore. So we're doing stuff like that, and also like how much have we written about, I don't know, the elections, who did we interview last time, what were the best performing articles, so we can do it next time. So yeah, that's interesting stuff.
And could you tell me, it sounds really interesting how you're kind of spreading the innovation. What kind of projects were you working on before you started working on Contribly? And like, what was your UGC engagement processes before you started working with us?
Well, that was funny because like I was doing the editorial system that we're using now. That was the main project, basically the only project I did for like 2 years of my life because it's so big. It's Q. Actually, the company, the product of the company is Q. The company is called Stibo. I think they're in Denmark. The editorial system is Q, and it's really flexible. So it's not one size fits all. You can completely adapt it to your own wishes, which is what I came in. And then we saw when we were doing the analysis for Q, basically what we already know, and that is our readers like to read. And that is something I stole from the New York Times because they did a research paper, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago about the state of journalism. And that is kind of what they expected. It's like, okay, we can do, or what they found out, not expected, what they found out. So they were like, okay, we can do all kinds of interactive graphs. We can do movies. We can do audio, which is all cool. We should all do that. But in the end, our readers like to read. People love to read newspapers. And that's why we're here. And that's also what we saw, like our journalistic content, like the articles we made, those were like the best parts of the website. So like people just wanted our news. So for the new site, we were like, okay, well, let's give them more news. So basically everything we have on the news sites are either news articles or human interest articles. But anyways, like what we make. And then we were like, well, okay, so the most important product is our reader, is what we want to give the readers what they want. So one of the biggest things that we wanted to do for next year is like, well, if we want our readers to spend more time with us, let's do something for them, like as in reader created content, so user created content. But I'd rather call it reader created content because like user sounds kind of like we're using them. So reader created content, and that's where you guys came in because like we were in touch before. And I was like, yeah, but like Contribly is like specialized in this. And I'm always like, well, I can probably build it myself, maybe if I have a couple of years. But like, especially when it came to Contribly, I didn't have the manpower nor the expertise. So then I was more than happy to work with you guys instead of like finding out the wheel together. Together, like by myself, all by myself. So I'm really happy with it. But that's how we came into it. It's like, okay, we need a program to generate user-generated content.
And when you were coming up with the idea that you wanted to focus on user-generated content, what were the challenges that you perceived before you started, before you necessarily speaking to us?
Well, a couple of things, obviously. One of the big challenges was like, okay, user-generated content or reader-generated content, 3 words, but what kind of content do we want to generate? Because, for example, you can also be like, there's like a lot of experiments going on with citizen journalism. It's like, do we actually want them to write articles and stuff like that? Or do we want to like have them send in stuff? But our experiences with that, granted, not based on a real experiment, but kind of based on what people were sending in through mail. And also, I've been doing editorial phone for a while, as in if people had news when I was young, they'd call me. It was almost never useful. I think it only led to maybe 1 or 2 news messages for all the 100 phone calls I had. So I was kind of like, I'm not saying that it's like dead on arrival, but I think that you have to, if you want to do that, you have to like really think about it and really make up a good plan. And not that you don't have to make up a good plan with Contribly, but it's on a different level if you want to have actually citizens provide you with journalistic content. So we're kind of like, okay, we're not going to do that for those reasons, but they can create their own content as well. Like for example, we had a summer competition where we like had people send in their best summer photos, and that was really popular. So we're kind of like, well, we can do that, like have people send in photos, but also like if we write something about it, ask for experiences, have you experienced that as well, and also maybe ask for tips, news tips. So we're like, okay, we're looking for people who know something about this. If you have any information, you can contact us, and then have the forum really exactly where we want it, namely under the message, instead of giving them an email address. And then because that's another thing, if you have to like have people leave the article and then open up an email client, even if it's done automatically, it's this other threshold that they might not take. So it's easy to have the form right in the middle of the article, just to make the threshold lower. So those were kind of the things we were thinking about. And also like people are doing user-generated content a lot nowadays, but it's called social media. So it's like, how can we get people? Because we get a lot of people coming from Facebook, and we place articles on Facebook, and people are reacting underneath the article. And we see that a lot of traffic is coming from Facebook, but also going back to Facebook. So one of the other ideas was, well, not that we can compete with Facebook, obviously, but maybe we can get some of the traffic to stay longer on our site, and some of the interactions that happen on Facebook now, mainly Facebook for us, but for the Telegraph, maybe also TikTok or Instagram or Blue Sky right now, Twitter. Maybe we can get some of that interaction happening on our own site instead of at Zuckerberg's place. So that was also like one of the ideas that we had. At least it was worth trying out. So that was kind of how we went in and how we were talking about it.
And tell me a bit about the experience that you had. So you're having these ideas, and you had the idea of the frustrations. You had an idea of how you wanted to go about it. We started having a conversation. Tell me a bit about how that then. What were the results from that?
Well, from there, it kind of went smoothly. Also because I talked to my editor-in-chief, and she was kind of like, well, user-generated content is like, well, I have just a product for you. And I could kind of guess what you guys were doing, because I have a lot of experiences with user interfaces, with integrating code into our articles. So I kind of had a pretty good idea of what you guys were doing. At least I thought I had a good idea of what you guys were doing. And it kind of turned out to kind of be like that. So when you actually showed me the product, I was kind of like, yeah, I thought it would be it, and I'm really happy with this. So I was kind of, you didn't even need to show me everything. I was like, yeah, this is what I want. Yeah, you can embed. Well, yeah, exactly, and then you have a gallery. Perfect. So I'm kind of fast with that. So as soon as I found out that what you guys were offering was exactly what I thought you were offering, then it came quick. Then we could set up a test very quickly. I thought it was 3 weeks or something like that before we pulled that through. Maybe a little bit longer from the actually talking about it until actually having people involved. But as soon as the right people got involved, it went pretty quickly. And obviously there were also other Mediahuis titles that were using it. But we were thinking about installing it anyways. But talking to the other Mediahuis titles was very nice as well, because we could like share best practices. But they are using it in kind of a different way than we are. So right now we have like 3 titles that are all using it, and they're all using it in different ways, which says something about the flexibility too. And after that, what we did is we presented it to all the chefs, all the new chefs. We have a lot of regional offices, and they all have their own chef. And we were like, okay, we want ideas, and we also showed them how they could implement it. We didn't really expect that much of that, because like as soon as you start showing new chefs how they could implement code, yeah, I don't know. Most of them are probably not going to do it, but we wanted them to know that it was available. And then we put a team on it of 3 journalists, actually 2 journalists and me, but it's basically them 2 right now pulling it entirely. And that works really, really well. So I kind of was afraid, that was one of my big fears, that after like the first drive where you're like showing it to people, you're like getting people together, we're actually putting stuff online ourselves, that it would kind of die out from there if we we were not involved ourselves, like
Mhm.
every week. But that doesn't really happen. I mean, it's less used than it was like the first 3 days. But we're putting something online every week at least, and I want to scale that up to 2-3 times a week, preferably every day. But that's where the huddles come in, I guess. So yeah, it went pretty smoothly.
And let's talk a little bit about the first call out that you created, or the first few call outs that you created to test it out. What were the benefits of that experience, and well, what were they, first of all, and what were the benefits of that experience for you? How did it go?
Well, it was pretty easy actually, because like we already did the summer competition, so we
Yep.
basically copied that. So instead of like doing the summer, send us your best summer photos, we were like, okay, send us your best photos the end of the summer. But then with a Contribly gallery, with an embed and an article and an example photograph, and something that you said to us is like, okay, first add something yourself because nobody wants to be the first, which is a very valuable lesson. So we. I don't think we posted the first 2-3 pictures ourselves, and then it started flowing in. I think you had the last numbers, but it was like over. Yeah, I got it somewhere here as well. But let's say not even like, I don't even care about the exact number, but it was a huge success. We saw like people like sending in their photos and started liking their photos, and this is exactly what we wanted. And that's also like, because like you can. We were talking about that, like, what's your measure of success? It's like, well, basically this, people are uploading their photos and liking each other's photos. And I don't really, you can like do a KPI. It's like, okay, if people have 500 photos, then, but yeah, and then they do 450 or whatever, is it a failure then? And it's also like the people that are uploading the photos are actually like engaging with our website. They're looking at our website. This is stuff that they would otherwise not do here because we wouldn't offer it. Obviously, if only 3 or 4 people would have uploaded a photo, then we would be having a different conversation. But I by my head, it was hundreds. So yeah, that kind of worked. And then we did the mushroom thing, which it was also a
What's
big
the mushroom thing? Tell us more. I love this one.
That's tradition. Like as soon as like the autumn leaves fall, then people go to the forest and look for mushrooms. And I thought everybody did that, but like I talked to you here, like no, not everybody does that. So maybe also because our climate is so ideal for mushrooms, because it's wet and it's leafy, so we have a lot of mushrooms. I mean, and the Gooie Nederlander, which is one of our newspapers, they had this competition every year. It's like, send us your most beautiful mushroom picture, and then they take the best ones, throw them online, but also print them in the newspaper. So we were like, well, let's do this with Contribly right now. And that worked very well as well. So we had, by my head, over 700 people liking each other's photos and sending in. So that was really cool. And we tried it with other subjects as well. But what we found out is like photo galleries work really well. News questions don't work that well. But it's also because we probably asked the wrong questions, because we're a regional newspaper and we were like asked something about like the Dutch national parliament. That didn't really do that well. So we're like thinking about, well, let's get it more regional. So that is basically the next phase of the project. How can we make stuff work that is not a photo gallery?
Okay. And how did Contribly support you in these like mushroom and summer photos compared to what you were doing before? How were they different?
Oh, like as in the actual support while doing it? Oh, yeah, but that,
support, or even the tool. Like, how was it different to how you were doing it before?
Yeah, that was like like through WhatsApp on a 5-minute basis. So no, that the support was actually amazing, and it was actually like you guys were offering all sorts of stuff that we really didn't think about. Like for example, like the preparation of a call out. We're used to like having ideas and then throwing them online. But what we learned from you guys is like, okay, yeah, but it really is a good idea to like think about it better. It's like, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to do? What is the use of this? Is it just like throw something online and having people send in stuff, or did you think about it a little bit longer? So that helped us really well. And also you guys were like, I don't know, I'm not saying spamming us, but they're like messaging us every day. It's like, okay, how does it go? How's it working? Do you guys need help? So no, that was very valuable. We never had the idea, okay, you dropped like this piece of software over on our heads and we're like, okay, good luck with it. This is it. No, not at all.
And what about the tools itself compared to how you were doing it before and how you're doing it? How did Contribly's tools help?
We use, I'm not sure if I can call names, but let's say we had a tool before which I branded as the 7th Circle of Hell, which it kind of was, because it like was a horrible user interface. It's like, okay, how do you make something up like this? I mean, why? Was it like, do you love torturing people? And I'm not saying this because I like talking to Contribly, but your user interface is so much more easy. Basically, it's just embedding a bit of code, and then you have your own environment in the background where you can just like choose the forms, where you can add all kinds of stuff, where you see the photo galleries. I mean, you can basically teach it to everyone.
That's
Even
good.
the journalists, yeah. And I can't say that about the first two. I'm not gonna name them because I feel bad. But like, yeah, it's bad.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And how has the team taken to it so far?
Well, pretty good. Actually, at first, no, because then they were like, oh, God, another tool. But then when they saw it was actually working, and we put the journalist right on it. And he is in charge of we call it ombuds. I don't think that is an English word. But we have an editorial team that are actually looking into readers' problems. Like, I don't know, I bought a phone and it broke down after 3 weeks, and then the company doesn't want to take it back. And then they write to us, and then with the leverage of the newspaper, we start calling them, and then they know that a publication will follow. Then most of the times they will help out the reader. And that person is also in charge of Contribly right now, because he has a lot of experience with, it's not really user generated content, but like, it's content that is generated through users.
Mm-hmm.
And he's pulling the Contribly card, and also like he's a very well-known journalist on our editorial team, so it really, really helps having him involved, because he used to be a news chef himself. So he's like, okay, so he can talk to other news chefs. He's like, I need this from you, and people are very inclined to help him out.
That's interesting. Picking the right people in the team has
been the right people. Yeah, getting leverage on the newsroom floor is like way more important than having the right tool. I mean, the tool is important. Don't get me wrong, but like the user interface, whether it's green, blue, or yellow, it doesn't really matter that much. It's kind of like you need the right people on the newsroom floor to get like stuff done, because journalists are conservative by nature.
And why did you choose Contribly, apart from obviously us talking to you at some point? Why would you have done that instead of something else?
Oh, but we looked into it because actually, I'm not sure. I think I saw you through LinkedIn, and then we were talking about it, and then we started Googling tools. And then Contribly popped up, and also it was developed on the newsroom floor, if I'm correct. So that really, really helped. So then it was kind of like, well, let's try this out, because like, yeah, we can try out a lot of tools, but this one is already being used in Mediahuis, and it was developed on the newsroom floor, and I already have Francesca's contacts in my LinkedIn. So it was kind of like a win-win-win situation. And then we're like, well, if Contribly turns out to be horrible, we can always look on.
Fair enough. And yeah. I've been absolutely delighted ever since. So it's great for me.
Yeah. So.
And maybe let's go into just talk a little bit around the data that you have seen, and like some in those specific examples, because I am very curious about those. One of the ones that you mentioned, the mushrooms, for example. So you always did mushrooms before. This is something that you tested with Contribly afterwards.
Yeah.
You say, the aim isn't to look at KPIs, but it would be really interesting to understand, what do you usually measure and what does that look like?
I'll show you some stuff that I measured. The thing is, and that's also like with, it's always the case with editorial data. It's almost never a causation. It's always correlation, basically, because there are so many factors involved. For example, it's hard to compare because like the last time we had a gallery outside our own environment. So people could send in photos and it would link to an external gallery, for which I do not have the data. So this is the first thing we're actually doing something like this with Contribly. So it's hard to compare, but I did so anyways, because that's where I am.
So was that a benefit to have it, not have it as an outside gallery and actually have it in your own? Or is that not necessarily so important?
No, of course, because it keeps people in their own environment. So for example, like underneath the article where we added the gallery, there were also like, we had recirculation articles. So, hey, are you reading this? Well, you can read this too. By head, I'm not even sure how many people clicked on that. But if I have an external gallery, I can't even do that. So there's like a lot of value in keeping people on your own domain. What we are realizing even more right now, but yeah, we've been conscious of this fact for a while, is basically that it's a time economy. We're not like we used to be able to drop newspapers into people's mailboxes and then they would read it. But right now, even with the entire online experience, or because of the entire online experience, like almost 85% of the people that we are reading us on a mobile phone right now, of all the online people. So because of that, it's way more a battle of people's time, because if you have a mobile phone, you can read us, but you can also open Netflix, you can open Disney Plus, you can open Spotify, you can do both, you can start web browsing, you can start WhatsApping with people, you can do all kinds of stuff. So how do we convince people of actually not WhatsApping but opening up our app, and then having them stay as long as possible, obviously, because we want them to realize that we have a valuable product, but also to show them ads and stuff like that, because like we are a commercial company. We are still a commercial company. We are a company that's like commercial in a way that we also think it's valuable to well, not educate people, but to inform people on like the local news and stuff like that. So there is like, most journalists obviously are left-wing people. We're not here in it for the money. Otherwise, we should probably have picked another job, but we do want to make money to keep on doing this job, you know. So of course it's very, very important to keep people on your platform, yeah, to monetize them, but you know, it kind of, I don't really think like that, but you understand what I mean. So if you send away people from your platform, then there's no way, then it's very hard to lure them back. So yeah, it's really, really important for us to have the galleries on our own environment. So what I did is, like, we put the gallery. We have two kinds of articles: free articles and premium articles. Premium means there's a paywall, and we put the Contribly stuff. We put it free because we want to have as much user-generated content as possible. So we don't want to give them the threshold for actually logging in. Maybe we will do that in the future, though, if we have something that's very successful, or if this photo competition turns out to be as successful as it is, then maybe in 1 or 2 years we'll start experimenting. We'll be like, hey, maybe throw it after a paywall, because like people love seeing the mushrooms and stuff so much that they might want to pay for it. So, but we're not there yet. So we looked at it for a free. We put it in a free article. And for example, the Gooien Eemlander, which is the article the newspaper that we put the article in. On the average, if you have your average free article on the Gooien Eemlander, it has 660, 1.6, but let's say 660 page views. So the average article pulls in 660 page views. The mushroom one pulled in 2,196. So that is, by head, 3.5 times as more. And the mushrooms one in 2023, so where we showed a couple of the photos and also gave the result of the competition, because we like send in your most beautiful ones, and the most beautiful ones we will publish in the newspaper, which we did this year as well, by the way. And that pulled in 1,234 page views. So 660 for your average article, 2,196, so almost 2,200 for the mushrooms, and 1,234 for the same article last year. So yeah, that says something. And like I said, it's not causation, it's correlation, because it could have been the weather, it could have been the news around it, but at least it's working. It's not scaring away people. On the opposite. And if you look at the time spent on page, and this is the average one, so this is also like the people looking at it and then immediately leaving. So the normal average time spent on page is 39 seconds on your average free article. Mm-hmm. And for the mushroom ones, it was 90 seconds. So yeah, that's a lot. And of course, we have a couple of people spending a lot of time there. We have a lot of people like immediately leaving, so the average is always kind of distorting. But going from 38.7 to 89.3, yeah, that's pretty impressive. And then we had the mushroom article in 2023, which showed the winning photos and the results of the competition, and that's on 21.9. So that was even below average if you look at the normal average thing, which kind of gives me the hypothesis that people don't really care about the result of the competition. They just want to send in and look at each other's photos.
Potentially. That kind of does make sense.
That is my hypothesis right now. Like I said, it's hard to prove. I mean, you can start asking people. So we can do some qualitative interviews and say, hey, why are you actually on this page? But just looking at the data, it kind of looks that is that.
Those are some fantastic results. What do you see your next steps with Contribly being now that you've kind of got those results?
Well, actually, it's doing. Yeah, it looks like it's doing something. I'd love to have more data, obviously. But the next step is like letting other stuff than photo competitions or photo galleries work better than they're doing now. Because there is for us obviously a need to have people on our side and interact with each other and maybe have some sort of communion forming, or is that a word, communion? How would you say that?
A
Communion.
community.
Community, thank you. Communion sounds like a Christian thing.
Yeah.
A community forming. That is important, but also people can actually give us information about articles that we haven't written yet. So we're also really interested in the good ideas of people. So we need to think of better ways to ask them, because I'm convinced that it's not really Contribly the tool, because that's easy. I think we're asking the wrong questions right now. And I know this because I've been talking to you, I don't know, last week, and you were giving me some ideas. Like, oh yeah, that is way smarter than what I thought of. So that is one of the next things that we're going to do. See if we can implement those. And then so the photo galleries work. That's a given right now. But how can we have a reader send in stuff that we can use for journalism? Then that is going to be the next big project.
And I'm looking forward to working on that with you.
Yeah, me too.
Definitely.
Me too. Robert, a lot.
And well, the cheekiest of all questions: would you recommend Contribly to anyone else?
Oh yeah. Especially if you, to be honest, especially if you don't have any tools like this, 100%. If you do have a tool like this, because we didn't have one, if you don't have a tool like this, is like not even a question. If you do have a tool like this, which we didn't, then it's probably a thing that you have to compare. So then you compare Contribly to whatever you have. But yeah, when it comes to, I would recommend it to other people.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Great.
Yeah, that has been my pleasure working with you.